Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Okay, so this episode is actually a little bit interesting in that we actually learn about a town that is nearby where Crystal Cove is. It's actually a town called Gatorsburg, and we do find out a little bit more about Gatorsburg in this episode. But long story short, it starts off with this family that's just driving through Gatorsburg, and what we find out is that the dad is very absent-minded. We don't actually formally find out who they are, but there's just this family that just goes to the town, and the dad is very absent-minded and thinks they're in the middle of New York when his daughter immediately points out that they're actually 2,000 miles away from where New York actually is, which they're very far away from where New York is supposed to be. But in any case, when they realize how hopelessly lost they are, and when they realize they're in the middle of Gatorsburg, which according to the sign only has 3 residents. They then proceed to move on. They then proceed to actually stop at a gas station to possibly ask for directions and maybe get some gas in the process. And while the dad is actually trying to figure out how to do both of those, the family dog actually winds up running out of the car into the brush and starts barking at something. And the daughter gets out of the car to go investigate. And while the dad is currently trying to figure out how to stock up on gas at the gas station, because as we explained, very absent-minded person, doesn't really know what he's doing. They're actually suddenly attacked by a trio of gator people who appear and chase them out and proceed to actually chase them back into the car and out of town. So they do wind up actually fleeing the place. But it's at this point where Mystery Inc. is revealed to actually be hanging out in Fred's house. And long story short, they're bored out of their minds because they haven't had a mystery in a while. And obviously, it's also raining, so they're also stuck inside that way. But in any case, eventually, Daphne does wind up finding a magazine in the what is it, the couch, and Fred immediately dives after it to try and grab it away from Daphne, but she gets to it before she can. And while it is initially believed to be a dirty magazine, it's in actuality revealed to be a magazine called Sports Illustrated, or rather Traps Illustrated, which is kind of funny because again, that's Fred's entire thing about how he's obsessed with traps in this one. But in any case, he merely snatches it away from Daphne, responding that he only really reads it for the articles, and that's about it. But in any case, he also then proceeds to point out that he actually got an idea for his latest trap from it, and as it turns out, Fred has actually been keeping himself busy by building a trap to rig his front door to catch whatever on the other side of it, which obviously Velma and the others are very skeptical about, pointing out that that there shouldn't be anything on the other side of the front door except maybe the mailman. At which point, and case in point, the mailman then proceeds to actually ring the front door and winds up getting stuck in the trap. And Fred winds up opening the door to see what it is he actually caught. And sure enough, as I explained, it is indeed the mailman who offers them a package. And Fred decides to thank him by not only taking the package from him, but also letting him out of the trap. At which point they proceed to actually open the package with Shaggy not being all too helpful, pointing out that because everybody's wondering what it actually is that they got sent. Since Fred remarks that he wasn't actually expecting a package, and Shaggy just not so helpfully states that maybe it's a box. It is not very helpful in the slightest, but. In any case, Fred winds up opening it up, and as it turns out, what's in the box is actually a gift from Mr. E, who sends them a handwritten letter along with a special gift for them to actually kind of continue onward and offers them a mystery. So he remarks that the letter merely remarks that he had been Mr. E had been saving it for a rainy day, which is very obviously supposed to be today, since it is indeed a rainy day, literally. And Fred actually winds up opening it to discover a handmade gator bag from Gatorsburg, as we kind of find out a little bit through the dialogue here. Gatorsburg apparently used to make old gator products, but And according to Scooby, who uses his enhanced smell to sniff it, Scooby remarks that it's brand new. He remarks that the bag is brand new, even though the rest of the gang knows that Gatorsburg has since shut down all of its gator production facilities, and obviously there's nothing else. There shouldn't be anything new coming out of it. So Fred, realizing that this is the mystery they've been looking for, decides to lead the gang out of the house and decides to actually take them to Gatorsburg to actually go and investigate why there's suddenly a new gator products when there shouldn't be. And they actually wind up getting stuck in Fred's trap along the way, but they do wind up climbing into the mystery machine and wind up driving 3 miles to Gatorsburg, where they actually wind up in the town of Gatorsburg, and after remarking about how downhill the town has actually gone, they actually decide to get out of the mystery machine and start looking for clues. With Fred obviously leading the charge on that, and Velma is not so subtle about the fact that she wants alone time with Shaggy, pointing out that obviously remarking that they should actually go clue hunting together. But Shaggy actually turns her down, pointing out that Scooby's right there and he actually can't abandon his best friend, and obviously he doesn't want Scooby finding out about their relationship. That's a thing that's been established. But it's at this point where they actually suggest that they actually go and head out to the Brigader Burger, which despite having visible gators in its food, is mostly fine. And also the food is implied to be very old. So, but Shaggy doesn't have any sort of problems with it. And Scooby and Shaggy just kind of start going to town, despite the fact that we see a gator monster in there, and it's implied that that's just kind of lurking around in there. But Velma merely remarks about why he would actually go in and eat instead of spending time with her, and he merely remarks that he can't actually hear her over the sound of his own stomach, and then proceeds to start playing with his stomach, remarking that, and just makes a bunch of remarks about how hungry he is by using his stomach as a puppet, which is kind of funny. But in any case, Velma gets frustrated with Shaggy and proceeds to leave in a huff, and Shaggy then proceeds to chase after her, asking her what's wrong, and she merely remarks that he didn't do anything, and proceeds to just continue walking off. At which point we actually Shaggy then proceeds to remark that he realizes the confusion of that because he didn't do anything, which is specifically because he doesn't want to actually admit his relationship to the rest of the gang yet. That's why she's mad. But in any case, after Fred remarks that there's actually nothing going on in the town, Velma then proceeds to point out that she's not particularly surprised, and then proceeds to actually give a bit of an explanation as to the history of Gatorsburg, which is that it used to be a big gator-centric town where there used to be a lot of we've already established this. They used to make gator products, but and it was founded off of that entire thing, but apparently they had the highest gator population in town, and then they just kind of killed them all off to make gator bags and stuff out of them. So obviously that didn't wind up working out all too well for them. But in case after they get into the car and after that little explanation, Fred goes to turn on the mystery machine and finds out that the mystery machine won't start. So he gets out to investigate, and then calls the rest of the gang to him, pointing out that their engine is missing. There's just a big, and as he explains it, you see that hole? It's supposed to be an engine. So yeah, he remarks that their engine is actually disappeared. It's at this point where they're actually confronted by Gunther Gator, who is the town mechanic, and remarks that they're not supposed to be there, and asks them why they're actually in Gatorsburg. Fred merely and after also he confronts Fred and points out, and Fred merely remarks that also, in addition to pointing out that the guy seems like he's built for the work, points out that their engine is missing and that they actually do need somebody to help repair it. We also do find out, and while Gunther is very open about the fact that he doesn't really want to help them, Velma does point out that he's a mechanic and it's kind of his job, so he decides to help them anyway and give them a look, and does point out what the gang already knows about how their engine is missing, and remarks that he'll have to order them a new one from Crystal Cove, but that it'll actually take a couple of days take over a couple of days overnight because obviously Crystal Cove is nowhere near where Gatorsburg is, or at the very least it's a couple of miles away, so it'll take a while. But he then proceeds to remark that his sister Greta Gator actually owns the only hotel in town, interestingly enough. So he remarks that they could actually get a room in her hotel and might actually be able to spend the night there. And with that, he then proceeds to actually drop off their mystery machine and them in his truck, but to actually driving the mystery machine over by towing it. And it's at this point where they actually proceed to actually check into the hotel, which they remark is a little bit creepy looking. And those fears aren't really helped all that much because as Scooby is actually walking, as Scooby in particular is walking into the hotel, the gator sign actually reads. It's in the episode. I forget what the name of the hotel actually is, but the sign with all of its prefixes and endings and all that. The neon on the sign actually winds up going out to spell tonight the dog dies. So yeah, Scooby winds up freaking out about that and tries to tell his friends what's going on, but they merely look at the sign. They merely look at him, look at the sign, and don't really understand what he's talking about. And Scooby's a little confused that the sign is now perfectly fine. So he doesn't really think about it all that much and proceeds to actually go into they actually wind up going into the hell, even into the hotel, actually admiring some of the decor, the gator-like decor that they're actually able to see, and eventually after arriving at the front desk, Fred actually winds up ringing the bell a couple of times because nobody answers the first time, but eventually we do actually meet Greta Gator, and but in any case they meet their son Grady Gator. I actually flipped them, so Grady Gator's the guy we met, Gunther Gator's his son, but I flipped them in my head a little bit, but in any case after meeting her son Gunther Gator, she merely points out that they have no vacancies, but Velma points out that, after a brief backstage points out that A, the sign, there's not only a sign in the window saying that they have a vacancy, but B, when she points out that the sign is broken, she points out it's a hand-painted sign. So yeah, eventually Greta Gator realizes she has to actually give them a room, so she calls them in to actually tell them to actually meet her son Gunther Gator, who is currently playing the piano in the other room, and they bring him out, and they're kind of creepy. I'll be perfectly honest. They're very creepy and very odd looking. They're very weird. But in any case, she remarks that that she'll obviously have to show them to the room, so she has to actually bring them into. So that she decides to actually bring them along the hallway, and in the process, they actually note that there's actually a large claw mark on one of the walls, and she merely remarks that, and Shaggy is the one to point it out. He notices the claw mark and points it out to Greta, but Greta points out that she doesn't see any sort of claw marks, and then she just keeps walking, and Shaggy notices something sticking in the claw mark. It's noted to be some sort of claw or some sort of tooth-like thing, but he winds up picking it up, eyeballs it suspiciously, and then proceeds to put it in his pocket to make a mental note of it later. At which point Greta then proceeds to bring them to her rooms, and they proceeds to explain the house rules. First and foremost, guys and girls need to be kept separate for obvious reasons. And also this just winds up being a very funny gag where Velma points out that she's going to have to bunk with Daphne then, but Greta doesn't seem to realize that Velma is a girl, and indeed Velma dresses very androgynously, so that's an easy mistake to make. But upon noticing the bow in Velma's hair, she does remark that Velma is indeed a girl, so she's more than fine. And also, she then proceeds to point out not to leave their rooms because obviously there's, and not so subtly implies that some creepy shit happens in the middle of the night. Points out that even if they hear the sound of the body being dragged, to not leave their rooms, which again freaks the Great Gang out just a little bit. And then finally, when she sees Scooby, remarks that the third house rule is no pets in the hotel, which makes Scooby very upset because, as he later remarks, he's not a pet. So and in actuality, he really isn't. I mean, technically speaking, he's Shaggy's pet, but Shaggy doesn't really treat him like a pet. He's more like a human being that just how happens to be a Great Dane. But yeah, he very much acts like a person. So yeah, the discrimination against him, he's a little upset about. But Fred merely tells him that he can actually sleep in the mystery machine overnight, and that it's only for the one night, and then it shall be fine. And Shaggy does reassure him, pointing out that he'll check in on him regularly, and pointing out that that's only for the one night, and he's hoping that Scooby will actually be fine. And Scooby merely remarks that he hopes so, and they have a very tearful hug before Scooby wanders off out of the hotel and goes to hide in the mystery machine and just hunker down for the night. But in case with that, the guys and girls then proceed to actually separate into their own rooms. Velma merely makes an excuse about how she's a very bad excuse, might I add. She just makes an excuse to leave the hallway and go see Shaggy, so that she can just leave. And obviously Daphne kind of picks up on that and decides to go looking for her after a little bit. Meanwhile, Shaggy is very also Fred has kind of a little bit of a conversation about how when they graduate high school they could actually all bunk together and get rooms, and points out that they could very easily all become roommates, which I don't think that's how that's actually going to work, given that Shaggy and Velma are currently in a relationship, and Daphne is implied to like Fred, but Fred is just oblivious to it. But in case Shaggy actually can't wind up stop pacing, pointing out that and he's also half paying attention to Fred, pointing out that he's worried about Scooby being alone in the mystery machine by himself, and points out that he hopes nothing bad'll happen to him. And Fred merely points out that if he's that worried about Scooby, that he could go and check on him real fast before they actually settle in for the night. So Shaggy actually winds up leaving to go do that, which conveniently puts him face to face with Velma, who actually snuck out to see him. And Shaggy makes up an excuse about how he actually snuck out to see her, but Fred also suggested that he go see Scooby, so he's going to do that. But Velma really detracts him from that, pointing out that Scooby will probably be fine, and then they proceed to actually go spend a bit of a quiet night alone, if you know what I mean, if you can read between the lines with that. But in any case, they then proceed to actually Daphne actually does wind up going looking for Velma, and eventually winds up in Fred's room, asking him if she's seen them. Fred actually remarks that he hasn't, but then points out that he actually has something to actually show Daphne, which she initially believes is romantic, because he actually winds up pulling out a scrapbook and remarks that it's all of the things that they've done together, which Daphne then proceeds to remark is a little bit romantic, but then it's revealed that it's just a scrapbook of all the traps he's made, which annoys her quite a bit. But in case while all of that is happening inside the hotel, Scooby is currently hunkered down inside the mystery machine, and discovers that and actually hears something scratching around outside, which he doesn't fully understand at first until he pokes his head out and discovers that the Gator people have actually started attacking the mystery machine, and he freaks out a little bit. He actually runs out of the mystery machine to get away from the Gator people, and actually winds up stumbling and tripping on the roof of the mystery machine and landing on the steps, and runs inside the hotel. With the Gator people actually slowly chasing after him, and eventually he winds up in Fred's hotel room, where Daphne has since gotten extremely bored of the fact that Fred is just explaining all of the traps he's made over the time they've known each other, and obviously she couldn't care less about it. She just wants to spend time with Fred, but monkey's paw effect. Careful what you wish for. So yeah, in any case, Scooby winds up barging into the room while they're doing that, and while Fred doesn't fully understand what Scooby's trying to tell them, as Daphne actually winds up picking it up perfectly and realizes that Scooby's trying to warn them about Gator people, and case in point, as Scooby is doing that, the Gator people actually wind up barging through the door, and the light actually winds up going out because Scooby got startled and actually leaped into Fred's arms and actually knocked over the lamp in the process. So they wind up climbing up onto the bed to try and get away from the Gator monsters, but quickly find out that was a bad idea because now they're completely cornered. At which point Fred gets a great idea to actually use the comforter from the bed to actually blind the Gator monsters, and they do exactly that. They pick up the comforter from the bed, fling it over the monsters' heads, and then proceed to run off and go find Scooby to go find Shaggy and Velma. And they're currently in the process of an attempted makeout session. They don't actually start anything, but Velma is just happy about the fact that the two of them are alone and goes to actually kiss Shaggy, with Shaggy being a little bit nervous about the whole thing because he doesn't like being alone with a girl. But even though they're established to be dating at this point, it is a little bit interesting. But in any case, as they're about to kiss, the rest of the gang actually winds up barging in, and Scooby actually breaks up the situation by unwittingly getting in front of Velma's kiss and actually licking Shaggy on the face, with Velma just wondering what the hell is going on, and Daphne isn't subtle about it. She just remarks "gator people," and Velma's very confused. So she doesn't understand what the hell they're talking about, since obviously she doesn't believe in gator people. But in any case, the light then proceeds to go out in their room, and the gator people start swarming into their hotel room, and obviously some antics ensue where one of the gator people actually winds up barging through the door. So they actually wind up running into the bathroom to try and get away from them, and with Scooby and Shaggy comically getting stuck in the door because they try to go in at the same time, but then they note that one of the gator people is already in there, and Shaggy then proceeds to point it out to them, and they run off, and they eventually start hugging the wall to actually try and sneak out of the room as silently as possible, but then one of the gator people bursts out of the floor and actually winds up grabbing Velma's leg and tries to pull her through the hole. And Shaggy actually steps in to save her, which she remarks is romantic, and points out that she's actually his hero. But but then she notes that the monster still seems to have a hold of her leg despite Shaggy saving her. But then Fred actually gets a closer look at it, and eventually realizes that it seems like it's part of a costume, and sure enough, when Velma inevitably kicks it, when she points out that when she thinks that it's kind of creepy and doesn't fully understand where it came from, she then kicks it in the face of one of the gator monsters, and they remark that the gator costumes are likely just that, costumes. At which point they proceed to actually run out of the hotel, and Fred tells Scooby to actually take the wheel. Which Scooby is obviously a little bit confused about, as is everybody else, because as Velma points out, they have no engine. Which is then where Fred reveals that they're actually going to be pushing the mystery machine downhill to actually escape town that way. And it works. They actually wind up pushing it down the hill, climbing onto the mystery machine, and they wind up just outside the town borders. At which point, the gator people back off and stop trying to attack them. And it's at this point where Fred realizes that there may be something actually a little bit more sinister going on, because as he points out, they weren't so much trying to eat them as they were trying to scare them out of town, with Daphne merely wondering what exactly is going on and why they would want them out of town. So at which point Fred decides to actually lead the charge and brings them back into Gatorsburg, much to Scooby and Shaggy's chagrin, since obviously now they know that there's a mystery afoot, and that there's actually something a bit bigger going on than just some gator people wandering around. So they do eventually track down where the gator people are hiding out, and they do eventually find out that they're actually hiding out in a boat shack, and they're seemingly transporting goods onto a boat. And after silently investigating the goods, they remark that it's the same legator products that Mr. E sent them in their package at the start of the episodes, which Velma remarks is definitely seems to bring the connection full circle. And to test to see if to run a test about the gator products, Daphne actually reveals that she actually has allergies to artificial animal skins. As she reveals, she actually has an allergy, and that's an interesting allergy to have now that I think about it. There's probably chemicals and treatment things that go into those kinds of things, but for various reasons, Daphne actually has an allergic reaction to artificial skins, and to test to see if the products are actually real, she actually wraps one of the belts around her arm, and she winds up becoming all broken out, which does confirm to the gang that the products are indeed a fake. And realizing that they've uncovered some sort of fake gator product smuggling ring, they decide that now's a perfect opportunity to actually set up a trap and actually try and catch the monsters. So what they do is they use Scooby and Shaggy as live bait, where they call them crocodiles on purpose to kind of get a rile out of them, and the gator monsters do indeed chase after them and proceed to actually try and catch Scooby and Shaggy. But then it's revealed that they actually just got led into a trap of what are they called? The rope traps, those things. they made rope traps out of the gator belts and just kind of grab them by the ankles and then proceed to trap them inside several of the shipping crates that they were actually using to transport their goods. At which point they now have the gator monsters restrained and have actually called the cops from Crystal Cove to actually come out and come arrest them, because that's the only people they have, and obviously Gatorsburg doesn't have its own. Obviously Gatorsburg doesn't have its own police station because there's again only 3 people. At which point the police officers arrive and they then proceed to not so subtly unmask the 3 culprits, which are the gators. The gator trio, Gunther, Graham, and Greta. As it turns out, they were actually the gators the whole time, and the episode isn't subtle about the fact that they were the culprits the whole time, since obviously the town only has 3 people, and there are 3 gator monsters, so obviously there's only 3 culprits, and on top of that, the gator monsters look exactly like their human counterparts. So yeah, it's not subtle at all about the fact that the gators are actually the ones in the costumes. So. At which point they then proceed to explain what their evil plan actually was, and as it turns out, they didn't really have much of an evil plan. As it turns out, if you can call it counterfeiting, and counterfeiting is indeed illegal, but basically they were just counterfeiting fake gator products to actually long story short, they were just counterfeiting fake gator products to kind of keep the town's economy going. Since obviously nobody lives in Gatorsburg, there's nobody to stop them. But they quickly realized that they would actually need something to actually keep people out of town, and the option is that their operation is discovered. So they then made up the gator monsters to chase people out of town, which is pretty straightforward. And upon hearing all this, Sheriff Stone, who is revealed to be wearing a full gator outfit instead of his usual police attire, is annoyed about the fact that his gator products apparently aren't real, even though he paid a fortune for them, and upon realizing he's been tricked, and upon realizing the shady dealings that are happening around in Gatorsburg, he then remarks that his lieutenants actually wind up arresting the people at Gatorsburg, even though, as he remarks, he has no jurisdiction there, and then leaves to go change because, as he explains, the fake gator doesn't breathe, so he smells a little bad. But in case Sheriff Stone then proceeds to get into his police car and drive off, with the Mystery Inc. gang being a little annoyed about that, pointing out that they actually have no way home, and even try to holler after him, asking him if he could give them a ride, which obviously he's not going to do because he doesn't like Mystery Inc. But and to this point where the mystery machine actually winds up starting on its own. And that confuses Mystery Inc. to hell and back, because obviously there shouldn't be an engine in there. At which point they go to investigate and discover that not only is the engine there, but Mr. E actually left them a note and is implied to be the one that stole their engine in the first place. And the implication here is that Mr. E actually stole Mystery Inc.'s engine because he wanted them to actually uncover the mystery, and obviously if they just leave out of the gate, then that's not going to be very fun. I'm not entirely sure when he had the opportunity to do that, but considering we didn't see him, but then again, Mystery Inc. was away from the mystery machine for an extended period of time looking for clues, so he could have very easily just slipped in, grabbed their engine, and left. Although, that begs the question of where he was hiding out throughout the entire episode, and again, we don't see him, so he's doing this entire thing from the shadows. So, yeah, all of that is just an interesting point to bring up, that we don't know where Mr. E is. We don't know what his deal is. All we know is that he's hiding out somewhere, and but in any case, back to his letter, which is that he then remarks that he congratulates them on solving the mystery, but then proceeds to point out that that's only one piece of the puzzle, and they still have a long way to go, and that more mysteries will come. And obviously, Fred is the most confused about this, pointing out that he doesn't fully understand what Mr. E could actually mean, and wonders what puzzle he's referring to. And in any case, that's where the episode ends. And yeah, this episode is very straightforward. I will admit, I've already brought it up, but obviously, it's very obvious that the criminals in this episode are the actual criminals, because 2 of the 3 are very creepy, and the third one is a little bit unhinged, so it makes perfect sense that they would actually be that they would actually be the culprits. And obviously the costumes look very much like their human counterparts. So obviously the only way you're not figuring out if the gator people are actually the gator people is if you're not paying attention. But and obviously this is a show made for kids, so yeah, kids probably won't pick up on that as easily, but they should be able to figure it out. It's as subtle as a brick to the back of the head, basically. This episode isn't subtle at all. So yeah, this episode is just kind of interesting in that we actually do see another town, one that is well past its heyday, because obviously the main thing that caused all of the people to come there for tourist season. Obviously it's gator related stuff. That's all gone. There's nothing there, and even Romo remarks in the episode that that's what happens when you build an entire gator-centric economy. But yeah, the episode is just interesting that we meet a town that is obviously turned into a ghost town, save for 3 people, and now the only residents of the town have been arrested. So now it literally is a ghost town. There's nobody there living there. Yeah, in any case, that is my review of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. I very much enjoyed this episode, even if it was a little bit stupid. But so, in any case, what did you guys think? Let's just get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well if you want to help support the show. It's only a couple bucks a month, and it does really help me out. So just go check that out. Again, link is down in the description. And also on the end screen, but that's beside the point. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, again, there's actually 2 ways you can do that. One is by checking out my Twitch. Again, link is down in the description and also on the end screen as well. So just go check that out. Go follow me over there. I stream every Sunday at 2:30. So if you have the opportunity to go check that out, I do recommend you do that. Just follow me over there so that you actually see the milestones, so that you actually see the notifications and stuff, and also help me fill out a milestone because I need 50 of you. But and also, finally, the other way you can actually see content from me is by actually checking out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the Bob Bailey is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But regardless of whether or not you do any or all those things, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!